Hello everyone, and welcome to my General Hospital official channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up.
Jason Morgan stood frozen in the middle of the Corinthos kitchen, his jaw tight and his eyes dark with disbelief as the words replayed in his head like a broken record. Ronnie is Sasha's biological mother. He could barely breathe. Everything about it sounded impossible, absurd, even, but the DNA results sitting in front of him didn't lie. His hands trembled slightly as he picked up the envelope again, half hoping he had read it wrong. But no, there it was in black and white, Ronnie Domestico, biological mother, Sasha Gilmore. Jason's stomach twisted. He'd seen a lot in his life, but this? This was something he couldn't process. Sonny walked in, mid-conversation with Dex about shipments, but when he saw Jason's expression, he stopped short. "What's wrong, Jace? You look like you've seen a ghost." Jason didn't answer at first. He just slid the papers across the counter toward Sonny, his voice low and gravelly. "Take a look." Sonny frowned, picking up the documents. His eyes darted across the lines, and within seconds, he was shaking his head. "No way. No way this is right." Sonny's tone hardened. "Ronnie Domestico? The cop who used to harass you and me back in the day? That Ronnie?" Jason nodded slowly. "Yeah. That's what the test says. She's Sasha's biological mother." Sonny slammed the papers down. "That woman's been dead for years. How the hell can she be Sasha's mother?" Jason's gaze fell toward the counter. "I don't know. But apparently, Sasha was adopted outright after birth. Everything was sealed, and it looks like it was covered up pretty deep." He ran a hand through his hair, still processing the shock. "The question is, who knew?" Meanwhile, Sasha Gilmore stood at her penthouse window, watching the evening light fade across Port Charles. She had no idea that her world was about to explode all over again. After everything she had been through, the drugs, the breakdown, the loss of Brando, she'd finally started to find her footing again. Cody had been supportive, and the thought of having someone steady in her life had brought her peace. But that peace was about to be shattered. Back at Sonny's place, Jason's phone buzzed. It was Sam. "Jason, you need to get over to GH. There's something about Sasha you should see." Jason immediately grabbed his jacket and headed for the door, Sonny close behind. They arrived at General Hospital to find Sam pacing near the nurse's station. "What's going on?" Jason asked. Sam glanced around before lowering her voice. "I was digging into Sasha's adoption records like you asked. I found out something else. The records were altered twice. Once in 1995 and again in 2015. Whoever did it didn't want the truth getting out." Jason's voice was tense. "Who would go to that much trouble?" Sam sighed. "Whoever handled Ronnie Domestico's case files after she died. There's a name that keeps popping up, Dr. Albrecht." Sonny groaned. "Oh, for crying out loud. Not Liesel again." Sam nodded. "Apparently, Ronnie gave birth at a private clinic. Liesel was on staff there at the time, and she signed off on the paperwork." Jason clenched his jaw. So Liesel knew. Moments later, they confronted Liesel in her office. She looked up, startled but composed as always. "Jason Morgan. Sonny Corinthos. To what do I owe this uninvited pleasure?" Jason didn't waste time. "You worked at a clinic 28 years ago. Ronnie Domestico gave birth there. I want to know everything you know about that baby." Liesel raised a perfectly arched brow. "Aw. You have discovered Sasha Gilmore's little secret." Jason's expression hardened. "It's not a secret anymore." Liesel smirked faintly. "I see. Well, if you must know, Ronnie came to me desperate, frightened. She had made many enemies within the department and the mob. She wanted the baby hidden, protected." Sonny stepped closer, voice sharp. "Protected from who?" Us? Liesel's smile faded. Perhaps. She feared retaliation. Ronnie believed the baby would be used against her, so she insisted on a closed adoption. I arranged it. Jason's fists clenched. You arranged it? You knew Sasha's mother was a dirty cop and you said nothing? Liesel shrugged. Dirty, yes. But also human. Ronnie was terrified. I was merely a doctor following instructions. Jason's voice was icy. You're lying. You always have an angle. Liesel's tone softened unexpectedly. Mr. Morgan, believe me when I say Ronnie's actions were not entirely her own. There were people above her, dangerous people, who wanted her silenced. The baby was leverage. Jason froze. Leverage? Liesel nodded. Yes. The child was meant to disappear, never to be traced back. But Sasha resurfaced, and fate has a cruel sense of humor. Jason turned away, his mind racing. If Sasha was Ronnie's child, it meant Sasha was connected to the same network of corruption Ronnie once ran with. That could put her in danger all over again. Sonny knew what Jason was thinking. You think someone might come after her? Jason nodded grimly. If they find out who her mother was, yeah. It's possible. Later that night, Jason went to see Sasha at her apartment. She smiled when she opened the door, but the look on his face told her this wasn't a social visit. Jason? What's wrong? He hesitated, looking around before speaking. We need to talk. It's about your past. She frowned. What do you mean? My adoption? Jason nodded. Yeah. I got the results back. Sasha, your biological mother was Ronnie Domestico. Sasha blinked, confused. Who? Jason's tone was careful. She was a detective, a bad one. She worked with the PCPD years ago. She was corrupt, violent, she's dead now. Sasha's face went pale. No, that can't be right. There's no way. Jason handed her the file. I checked 3 times. It's real. Sasha stared at the papers, her hands shaking. Ronnie Domestico. I've heard that name before. Brando mentioned her once when he was talking about dirty cops. Oh my God, Jason, what does this mean? Jason softened his tone. It means you deserve to know the truth. You've been through enough lies in your life. I didn't want you finding out from someone else. Sasha sank onto the couch, her eyes filling with tears. All this time, I thought I was finally figuring out who I am. And now, this? Jason sat beside her. You're still you. This doesn't change that. Sasha shook her head. It changes everything. If my mother was some crooked cop, what does that make me? Jason's voice was calm but firm. It makes you Sasha Gilmore. The woman who fought her way back from addiction, who survived loss, who's still standing. Ronnie's choices don't define you. She looked up at him with watery eyes. Why do you always know what to say? He gave a faint smile. Because I've been there. When you find out your past isn't what you thought, it messes with your head. Across town, Sam and Spinelli were still digging deeper into the files. Spinelli's fingers flew across the keyboard. My cyber sleuthing has unearthed something most peculiar. Ronnie's pregnancy record lists an unnamed father, but there's a redacted section marked federal interest. Sam leaned over his shoulder. Federal interest? As in FBI? Spinelli nodded. Indeed. Which suggests that Sasha's birth wasn't merely a personal affair, it was part of an ongoing investigation. Sam frowned. So Sasha's biological father could have been a Fed? Spinelli shrugged. Or someone they were protecting. Back at the apartment, Sasha's shock began turning into anger. Jason, if this is true, then someone's been lying to me my entire life. I need to know why. Jason nodded. Then we'll find out. I'll help you. Sasha wiped her tears, determination flickering in her eyes. No more secrets. I'm done being someone's pawn. Jason gave a small nod of approval. Good. Because whoever covered this up might not be done with you yet. The next day, Jason met with Dante Falconeri, who had his own history with Ronnie. Dante's eyes widened as Jason explained. Ronnie Domestico had a kid? Sasha Gilmore? You're kidding me. Jason shook his head. DNA confirmed it. Dante exhaled. Man. I remember when Ronnie went off the rails. She was mixed up in human trafficking, extortion, you name it. But she always claimed she had something to lose. Maybe this kid was it. Jason leaned forward. I need you to pull any remaining case files on her. Anything connected to federal cases or sealed records. Dante nodded. I'll do what I can. But if the feds were involved, this could get messy. As the investigation deepened, strange things started happening. Sasha's apartment was broken into, her files rifled through but nothing stolen. Jason's instincts kicked in, this was a warning. He told Sonny. Someone doesn't want the truth coming out. Sonny frowned. You think this ties back to whoever Ronnie was working with? Jason nodded. Yeah. And now that Sasha knows, she's a target. Meanwhile, Sasha was at GH, trying to focus on her day, but she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching her. She caught a glimpse of a man lingering near the nurse's station, pretending to read a chart. When she turned, he disappeared. Her pulse quickened. She pulled out her phone and called Jason. Hey, it's me. I think someone's following me. Within minutes, Jason was there. You okay? She nodded shakily. I think so. But I swear someone's been watching me. Jason's gaze swept the hallway. You're not imagining it. They went back to the penthouse, where Jason assured her he'd post someone outside. You're safe here, he said quietly. No one's getting through me. Sasha looked at him, her voice breaking. Why are you doing this? You don't owe me anything. Jason's expression softened. You're part of this now, whether you like it or not. And I don't walk away from people who need help. As the night settled in, Sasha sat alone by the fire, the DNA papers still on the table. She whispered softly to herself, Ronnie Domestico. Mom? Tears streamed down her face as the weight of her past collided with the uncertainty of her future. Jason watched from the shadows of the doorway, knowing that the truth had only opened the first door, the one leading to a storm that hadn't yet hit Port Charles. In the days that followed, new revelations surfaced. Spinelli uncovered that Ronnie had stored files in a safety deposit box before she died, files about a trafficking ring and names that included federal agents, mob associates, and even someone currently working in the PCPD. Jason's worst fear became reality. Sasha wasn't just a victim of circumstance, she was the living link to a secret that powerful people had killed to protect. As Jason stared out over the harbor, he murmured to himself, this isn't over. And somewhere, deep in the shadows of Port Charles, someone whispered back, no, it's just beginning. The metallic tang of old blood and industrial-grade cleaner was a scent Jason Morgan knew as intimately as his own reflection. It was the smell of consequences, of violence meted out and endured, of secrets stitched closed under the glare of fluorescent lights. The emergency room of General Hospital was a second home, a chaotic purgatory where lives teetered on the edge, and tonight, it held his entire world in its cold, unfeeling hands. Sasha Gilmore, the woman who had become a daughter to him in all but blood, lay behind a set of swinging double doors. The call had come in as a frantic, fragmented burst from Sonny, a car accident on the rain-slicked streets of Port Charles. A drunk driver, a swerve, a sickening crunch of metal and glass. Sasha had been on her way back from a charity event, her laughter still a bright echo in Sonny's mind when he'd called Jason. Now, Jason stood like a granite sentinel, his posture rigid, his hands clenched into white-knuckled fists at his sides. Every beep from a monitor, every hurried footfall of a nurse, sent a fresh jolt of dread through his system. He saw the fear etched on Sonny's face, a mirror of his own internal turmoil. Sasha was family. She was the bright, resilient spirit who had weathered so many storms, and the thought of her being broken, of that light being extinguished, was a physical pain in his chest. The doors swung open, and Dr. Terry Randolph emerged, her face a mask of professional calm that did little to soothe the rising panic in the waiting area. "She's stable," Terry said, and a collective, shuddering breath was released. The head trauma was minor, a concussion, but the internal bleeding was the main concern. "We've managed to get it under control. She's lost a significant amount of blood, however. She's going to need a transfusion." "Whatever she needs," Sonny said immediately, his voice rough with emotion. "Just tell us what to do." "We're typing and cross-matching her now," Terry continued, her gaze shifting to include Jason. "Given the severity of the blood loss, we need to move quickly. We'll use the hospital's supply, but in these situations, it's always best to know if there are any immediate family members who could be potential donors. It can streamline the process." "Do we have any contact information for her biological parents?" The question hung in the air, simple and routine, yet it landed in the pit of Jason's stomach like a lead weight. Sasha's past was a closed book, a story of pain and abandonment she rarely opened. He knew the broad strokes, a mother who gave her up, a father she never knew. It was a source of a deep, quiet sorrow for her, a foundational wound that had shaped her life. "She was adopted," Jason said, his voice low. "She doesn't have contact with her birth parents. It's a closed adoption." Terry nodded, her expression softening with understanding. "Okay, not a problem. We'll proceed with the banked supply. She's a universal recipient, AB positive, which makes things easier. We'll get her set up in the ICU. You can see her briefly in about 20 minutes." As Terry disappeared back through the doors, the immediate crisis seemed to abate, replaced by a grinding, anxious wait. But Jason's mind, a machine honed for strategy and threat assessment, had latched onto a detail. A closed adoption. A mother who vanished. It was a thread, loose and frayed, in the complex tapestry of Sasha's life. He pushed the thought aside, chalking it up to the stress of the night. His only focus was Sasha's recovery. The next 48 hours were a blur of hushed voices in hospital corridors, of plastic chairs that became makeshift beds, of coffee that tasted like ash. Sasha drifted in and out of consciousness, pale and fragile against the stark white sheets, but the doctors were optimistic. The transfusion had been a success, her body was responding. The relief was palpable, a slow unwinding of the tension that had gripped Jason's every muscle. It was on the second day, during a moment of rare quiet, that the thread he had unconsciously noted began to pull. He was standing by the window in Sasha's room, watching the city lights begin to flicker on in the dusk, when his phone vibrated. It was a text from Spinelli, his brilliant, if eccentric, associate. "Oh, stone-cold boss of mine, a query regarding the digital fortifications of the Corinthos Morgan Empire. The Jackal has detected a series of low-level, almost clumsy, probes into the personnel files. They seem focused on the lovely, recovering fair maiden, Sasha. Nothing breached, of course, but the attempt is curious. The digital scent trail is faint, but the Jackal shall hunt." Jason frowned, his instincts immediately flaring. Probes into Sasha's files? It could be anything, a reporter looking for a scoop on her condition, a rival business associate trying to find leverage. But combined with the residual unease from Terry's question about blood relatives, it created a low hum of suspicion in the back of his mind. He typed a quick reply. "Find out who it is." He didn't have to wait long. Later that evening, as he was walking the sterile, quiet halls to clear his head, he saw a familiar and deeply unwelcome figure leaning against the nurse's station. Ronnie. The man was a parasite, a low-level enforcer and information broker with a slippery grin and a reputation for being wherever trouble was brewing. He'd been a thorn in the side of Sonny and Jason's organization for years, always skirting the edges, always just barely avoiding the consequences of his actions. What was he doing here? Ronnie had no business in the ICU wing. He had no connection to Sasha, no reason to be anywhere near her. Unless... Jason moved with a predator's silence, coming to a stop directly behind the man. Ronnie. Ronnie jumped, spinning around with a startled expression that he quickly smoothed into his trademark oily smile. Jason. Heard there was some trouble. Just paying my respects. How's the girl? The casual use of the girl set Jason's teeth on edge. She's fine. What's your interest? No interest, Ronnie said, holding up his hands in a placating gesture. Just a concerned citizen. Port Charles is a small town, you know? We all look out for each other. It was a lie. Every word of it. Jason could smell it on him. Stay away from her, Ronnie. You don't want to be on my radar right now. The smile on Ronnie's face didn't falter, but something shifted in his eyes. It wasn't fear. It was something else, something more complex, a flicker of possessiveness, of a secret knowledge. Wouldn't dream of it, Jason. Just hoping for a speedy recovery, that's all. He slinked away, leaving Jason with a cold, hard knot of certainty in his gut. Ronnie's presence was not a coincidence. The digital probe Spinelli mentioned, the question about Sasha's biological family, and now Ronnie lurking like a vulture. The pieces were scattered, but a terrible picture was beginning to form in the periphery of his mind. He refused to look at it directly, to give it shape and name. But the seed of horror had been planted. Back at his penthouse, unable to sleep, he gave Spinelli a new, direct order. I want you to dig. Not just into who was probing the files. I want you to find Sasha's biological mother. Everything. Past aliases, medical records, anything you can find. I don't care how deep you have to go. Spinelli, sensing the gravity in Jason's tone, didn't crack a single joke. Consider it done, oh, grim guardian. The jackal shall dive into the digital abyss and pluck forth its secrets. The wait was agonizing. Jason spent his days at the hospital, watching Sasha grow stronger, her smile returning, her color improving. Each moment of her recovery was a blessing, but it was now shadowed by the specter of the investigation. He watched her, the way she pushed her hair behind her ear, the cadence of her laugh, the shape of her hands, and he tried to push away the comparisons his brain was desperately trying to make. It was impossible. It was ridiculous. Ronnie was a monster, a bottom feeder. Sasha was light and goodness. There was no connection. 3 days later, Spinelli arrived at the penthouse, his usual exuberance replaced by a solemn, almost sickly pallor. He carried a thin manila folder, which felt disproportionately heavy with implication. The jackal, he has returned from the depths, Spinelli said quietly, placing the folder on Jason's desk. The trail was well hidden. Buried under layers of sealed court documents and paid-off record keepers. A veritable digital labyrinth of deceit. Jason stared at the folder, his heart hammering against his ribs. And? Spinelli swallowed hard, unable to meet Jason's eyes. The probes into the personnel files, they were amateur, a cover. The real search was originating from a different source, one with a more personal investment. The individual seeking information on Sasha Gilmore, née Samantha Smith, was one Ronald or Ronnie O'Brien. The name landed like a physical blow. Jason felt the air leave his lungs. Why? The jackal cross-referenced the dates, the locations, the sealed adoption records from the state of New York, Spinelli continued, his voice barely a whisper. Sasha's biological mother was a woman named Marianne O'Brien. She was 17 when she gave birth. She had a history of petty crime, drug use, and a known association with a 22-year-old small-time hustler named Ronnie. They were a couple at the time. The room began to tilt. Jason gripped the edge of his desk, his knuckles turning white. He could hear the blood roaring in his ears. No, he said, the word a low, guttural denial. The birth certificate, Spinelli pressed on, his duty to the truth overriding his terror. It was filed, then sealed. The father's name was listed as unknown. But the jackal found a copy of the original, unfiled draft in a defunct social worker's private archive. The name written in the space for father was Ronald O'Brien. The world stopped. The hum of the city outside faded into a dull, meaningless buzz. Jason's mind, usually a fortress of control and logic, shattered. Images flashed before his eyes, Ronnie's smug, possessive smile in the hospital hallway. Sasha's innocent, trusting face. The violent, depraved history of the man, the beatings, the extortion, the sheer moral filth. And Sasha, her life, her spirit, her very DNA, intertwined with that. It was a violation of cosmic order. A sick, twisted joke played by a cruel universe. No, Jason said again, his voice cracking with a raw, unfiltered anguish he had not felt in decades. It's not possible. There has to be a mistake. The Jackal has triple verified the data streams, Spinelli said, his own eyes glistening with unshed tears. The genetic markers from the medical records, the timeline, the association. I am so sorry, Jason. The probability is 99.87%. Ronnie is Sasha's biological father. The confirmation was a guillotine blade falling. The horror was no longer a lurking suspicion, it was a concrete, immutable fact. It was a stain, a contagion that had just infected the purest part of his life. Jason felt a wave of nausea so powerful he had to brace himself against the wall. His stomach churned, his vision swam. This was a different kind of violence, a psychological evisceration that left no external mark but destroyed everything within. Ronnie. The man was a caricature of everything Jason and Sonny stood against. He was undisciplined, greedy, and needlessly cruel. He used people as commodities and discarded them without a second thought. He was the kind of man they had spent their lives building walls to keep away from their families. And he was the source of Sasha's life. He had a biological claim to her, a thread of ownership that, while legally meaningless, felt profoundly, terrifyingly significant. The protectiveness Jason felt for Sasha mutated in an instant. It was no longer just about shielding her from external threats. It was about protecting her from this truth, a truth so devastating it could break her. Her entire identity was built on the foundation of being unwanted by a mother who couldn't care for her. How could she ever reconcile that with the knowledge that her father was not just absent, but was a living, breathing monster who walked the same streets, a man capable of such darkness? It would shatter her. It would poison every happy memory, taint every moment of self-worth she had ever fought for. And Ronnie knew. That was the most chilling part. His presence at the hospital wasn't a coincidence. It was a reconnaissance mission. He had discovered the truth, or perhaps he had always suspected, and Sasha's public life had brought it to the surface. He was circling his prey, and Jason knew, with a cold, deadly certainty, what Ronnie's interest would be. It wouldn't be paternal love. It would be leverage. It would be a tool for extortion, for manipulation, for a piece of the Corinthos Morgan empire. He would see Sasha not as a daughter, but as a key, a weapon to be used. Jason's nausea was swiftly replaced by a rage so pure and cold it was almost calming. It was a familiar feeling, the bedrock of his personality. It was the rage he unleashed on those who threatened his family. But this was different. This enemy was inside the walls. This enemy had a biological right to exist in Sasha's orbit that Jason could never sever. He had to tell Sonny. The walk to Sonny's brownstone was a blur. The world had taken on a nightmarish hue, every sound distorted, every face a potential mask. When he arrived, Sonny was in his study, a glass of bourbon in his hand, finally relaxing after the stress of Sasha's accident. Jason, come in. I was just about to call you. Diane says Sasha can be discharged the day after tomorrow. We'll have a nurse at the house, but she's going to be okay. Sonny's smile was genuine, full of the relief they had both been feeling just hours before. Jason stood in the doorway, unable to move further into the room. He knew the devastation his next words would cause. He saw the peace on Sonny's face and knew he was about to obliterate it. Sonny, he began, his voice hollow, stripped of all emotion. Sonny's smile vanished instantly. He knew that tone. It was the tone Jason used when the world was about to catch fire. What is it? Is it Sasha? Did something happen? It's about Sasha, Jason said, forcing the words out. But not her health. It's about her past. Her biological parents. Sonny frowned, setting his glass down. What about them? You know that's a closed book, Jason. It's a painful subject for her. We should leave it alone. We can't, Jason said, his jaw tight. I had Spinelli look into it. There were probes. Into our systems. Someone was digging. Who? Sonny's voice was sharp, his protective instincts flaring. Jason took a steadying breath, the air feeling like shards of glass in his lungs. Ronnie. The name hung between them, ugly and toxic. Sonny's face contorted in confusion and disgust. Ronnie? Why would that scumbag be looking into Sasha? What possible interest could he have? This was the moment. The point of no return. Jason locked eyes with his best friend, his partner, the man who loved Sasha as much as he did. He's her father, Sonny. Ronnie is Sasha's biological father. For a long moment, there was only silence. Sonny stared at him, his expression blank, as if his brain had simply refused to process the information. Then, a slow, dawning horror spread across his features. His eyes widened, his mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. He took an involuntary step backward, as if he had been physically pushed. No, Sonny whispered, the word a ragged plea. Jason, that's not funny. That's not possible. Spinelli has the evidence. The original birth certificate. The timeline. It's him. Sonny's denial was more violent, more vocal than Jason's had been. He slammed his fist on the desk, making the glass jump. No! That piece of garbage? That animal? He is not her father. He doesn't get to be. He doesn't get to have any part of her. His voice rose to a roar, fueled by a paternal fury that was terrifying to behold. You tell Spinelli he's wrong. You tell him to look again. He's not wrong, Sonny, Jason said, his own voice quiet but implacable. I wish he was. The fight seemed to drain out of Sonny all at once. He sank into his chair, his face ashen. He looked old, suddenly, and utterly defeated. He ran a trembling hand over his face. My God. My God. That monster. His blood runs in her veins. He looked up at Jason, his eyes filled with a torment that was profound. She can never know, Jason. Do you understand me? She can never, ever know. It was the same conclusion Jason had reached. The truth was a weapon of mass destruction, and it was their duty to keep it sheathed, forever. Ronnie knows, Jason said, the practical, deadly part of him taking over. Or he strongly suspects. That's why he was at the hospital. He's not there out of concern. He's assessing his asset. Sonny's eyes darkened, the grief in them hardening into something cold and murderous. The businessman, the family man, receded, and the powerful, dangerous mobster took his place. He thinks he has a claim. He thinks he can use her to get to us. He looked at Jason, and an unspoken understanding passed between them. That can't happen.